Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast brought to you by Jack and Coke. I'm your host, Pete B. I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse here. We were just talking about our days. Sam, how you feeling tonight, man?
Feeling pretty good. I'm ready for this weekend. I'm nervous, but I'm ready for this weekend.
I think a good portion of the fan base is probably a little on edge going back to Norfolk, SB Ballard. It's been a house of horrors, and we will talk about ODU later tonight. We're going to recap Marshall in a minute, but I do need a cheers from Sam to kick us off.
My cheers is to going 1-0 last weekend. Feels good to get in the win column. I think the guys needed that. It wasn't the most beautiful win, but it was a 17-point win against a team with a pulse. And that was really nice. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous day in Blacksburg if you're able to make it down there for the game. So cheers to the first win of the season.
I've got a very full, large glass of beer here that we will talk about a little bit later. Depth chart injury update to kick us off. Not any changes from last weekend. I was kind of surprised about that, not to see anything. Stroman is still out with his injury, probably a couple more weeks for him. Gallo is still questionable and doubtful, really. And
didn't practice today.
Yes. So. And Tootin was in blue. But
Brent Pry came out and said that was just precautionary. Didn't want to get him any hits today. I'd expect they do that probably throughout the rest of the year with Tootin.
Blue contact jersey on Wednesday?
Yeah, Miami Dolphins style. Like Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. No one touches them in practice.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. CFB Monday. Me and Sam recorded 8 p.m. this past Monday. Thought it went really well. We had Evan from the Red and White podcast on with us to discuss a little bit of NC State. He was licking his wounds and just like we did earlier in the year, but it was still a very good show. I thought he had some good insight on the ACC. And then Sam and I gave our playoff predictions, and you just released your updated program power rankings. Make sure I get this right.
Dude, I have no idea what I'm actually going to call them, but that's just like what stuck. Yeah, so I did. And it's you can check that out on my Twitter. It's right below my name here. If you're watching on YouTube at Sam of Saturday, I have them up there. It's starting to make a little bit of sense. There's only a couple teams that I'm like, oh, you don't belong there. Like SMU is still ranked pretty high because they've played 3 games. So they're ranked a little bit higher than most teams. They'll have a bye week coming up here pretty soon. We're starting to get a little bit of a picture here. Like I think after this weekend, maybe we'll have to wait till next weekend. We'll start to have a pretty good idea of the teams that are at least in contention for those 12 playoff spots.
Yes, and then conference play will get started and things could get turned on their head. But I'm looking forward to that, man. Just, you're right. Every week that goes by with the data, whether it's SP Plus or some of the other rankings we really enjoy, you just feel like the framework is being built out better and you're getting a better idea of who's actually good.
Yeah, it is like a Game of Thrones or Vikings or like one of these big dramatic shows that builds on top of each episode. That's what college football feels like.
And I love the fact that with SP Plus, and tell me if this is how you do your rankings, last year, every week that goes by, last year's whatever you did gets phased out a little bit more and more.
Yeah. So after week 3, we will change the opponent adjustments to what has been seen this year. So right now, the opponent adjustment is based off of the preseason rankings, which are based off of last year. So after week 3, quarter of the way through the season, or 3 games into the season, quarter of the way through the schedule for most teams, we will move to basing it off of the current rankings.
So we could get some wild swings.
You could get some wild swings. Yeah. And I had a bunch of people asking me about like, oh, how is Tech still ahead of Vandy? How is Charlotte ahead of James Madison? And it's not really meant to rank teams, Team A versus Team B. It's to rank teams based on their likelihood to compete for a national title. And I think it's pretty clear Virginia Tech has a better chance of making the playoff than Vanderbilt. Like that's kind of a statement of fact at this point with the schedules they have to play. And so that's why you still have some teams hanging around there, like Iowa State still ranked really high with their schedule in the Big 12. Miami all the way up in the top 10 pretty comfortably in the top 10. So you start to see those a little bit. If they lose, they'll be phased out. If they keep winning, obviously they keep rising to the top. But there is a clear line after Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama. After that grouping, there's a significant drop off.
And that's the difference between your rankings, Pate's rankings, SP Plus's rankings, ratings, is that those other ones, they tend to be like head to head, like power, just like who's better than who on a neutral field. Whereas yours is like better odds of making the playoffs. And that's an important distinction.
Yeah, around week 4, I'm going to look at the to make the college football playoff odds for some of these teams like Iowa State, who like if they go 10-2 and Iowa is a decent team and they have that win at Iowa and they do well and kind of like that's a team who could sneak in. And you might get some pretty good odds on
Well,
that.
you had Iowa State in your most recent playoff predictions. That's we both did ours on Monday for CFB Monday. You had Iowa State in, and I guess I had Tennessee instead of Iowa State, but the rest of our picks were the same. They're on our X page, our Twitter page. Go there. It's the most recent tweet. You can see what me and Sam predicted. Let's talk about the Pick'em leaders. There are 3 leaders in our thing at 13-7. So we've done 20 games through 2 weeks. Fitted Jones, Hokie Stigui, and I guess this is Ann McGopher. Those are the 3 tied for first place. I'd like to shout out the people who are at least in first place. I am tied for 4th, meaning I have the second most amount of wins at 12-8. I am tied with 3 other people. So a couple of good weeks. This past week, I think I went 7-3. So that was better than my first week. But every now and then a blind squirrel finds an acorn. And I happen to find one this past weekend. We'll see if I can stay up there because last year I did not do too well in the 2-deep pick'em. Sam, let's talk about this Aslan event. You are going to be at the Aslan in Virginia Beach on Friday, 9/13, the night before the ODU game, 7 to 9 p.m. What can people expect from you?
They can expect to see me there.
Yeah, you're going to be there.
I'm going to be there. We're going to be hanging out, trying some good beers. It's a really cool spot. There are awesome games. Arizona, Kansas State is going to be a great game. I think there's one other on Friday night. So going to be an awesome time. Come out. I think I might have a score prediction, submits your score prediction. You might get a prize, something like that. And maybe some other weekend games here. So come through,
people
say hi. Yeah.
People know what you look like if they watch on YouTube, but if they don't watch on YouTube, will you do the red rose in your mouth or something? Like how will people find you?
maybe I will. I don't know. I'll probably wear something pretty basic. I got to check the weather and stuff like that, but I'll let people know what
something
I'm wearing.
Hokie, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to try to find a table. I'm going to have the lunchbox there.
Okay.
And we'll make it work. You'll know it's me.
Yeah. I would assume they'll know it's you.
I'll be the guy sitting alone drinking beer at a table with a old-fashioned lunchbox. That'll be me.
All right. We are on a march to 3,000 subscribers. If you're watching here with us tonight, make sure to like the video. It will really help us out. When we lose those games at the beginning of the season, like we did to Vanderbilt, it doesn't hurt our viewership and our listenership the next week because people want to hear about the doom and gloom. They want to hear about what the hell happened. But now this is the residual effect that we need your help now more than ever. Please like the video. Please subscribe. It really helps us out. Game recap, Sam. Let's get right into it. It was a real ugly first half against Marshall. Offense struggled. It was 10-7 at halftime. And that was the only reason we had a lead was because of Jalen Lane and his awesome return. And then the second half, we put an emphasis on the run, scored 3 straight possessions, got it to 31-14. And essentially did cruise control.
Yeah.
And that's how it ended. I mean, the fourth quarter wasn't so exciting.
I told you on College Football Monday, but kind of a classic Beamer ball game, right? Offense looks terrible for a bit. You get a special teams touchdown. Defense is locked down. You run the ball, pull away in the second half. That's a classic Beamer ball win.
It really was.
And that's kind of how it felt. I never felt Virginia Tech was in danger of losing that game. I never felt like it was in danger of being a close game. But it was 10-7 at halftime. And
it was 17-14 because
17-14 because of the big run.
Yeah. They scored right after we scored in the second half. But we did separate and we did win by 3 scores. Let me play the voicemails, though, to give you a better idea of how it played out for some of our fans.
All right. So 1.5 games into the season, and it looks like we've regressed back to, year one of the Bowen offense. I don't know why you figure out how to run a successful offense and go back to the old ways, but here we are.
Justin Fuente, is this you? Is this you? Brad Cornelson, is this you? Oh, it's not? Oh, it's year 3? Oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's actually nuts.
2 weeks in a row, we've been quote-unquote shell-shocked in the first half when it comes from an offensive standpoint. So does that mean we have an issue with game plan install and scouting, like, during the week? Like, that seems like a pretty big issue to me. Thanks. Love the podcast.
They finally scored. They took a punt return. This is kind of like getting in a boxing match with a dude in a wheelchair and winning by split decision.
1 minute and 34 seconds left in the second half, and we're in a hell game with Marshall.
The inexperienced coordinator run is washed. Let's move on to something a little bit more, experienced, so we can get back to the Hokie ways. Thank you for the therapy.
What's going on? Hey, what's going on?
We did have a lackluster first half. However, it was really great to see the team turn around in the second half and play like they should.
Hey, I realize I might have overreacted a little bit there in the first half, and I just wanted to say that, I was sorry and I was kind of out of line. Like, I was out of line.
Hopefully this is the start of a big winning streak, and hopefully we can get better from here. All right, go Hokies.
Really think it's great for the fellas honoring the 1999 team in this way. No, it was never a doubt, right? Never a shadow of a doubt.
I gotta tell you, I just love the Bruce Springsteen concert. We have been through the Badlands, but I tell you what, now we are born to run. Can't wait to watch us win an ODU next week. The hype train, we'll bend it up, but you know what? I've still got that first class ticket, and I'm ready to watch the Hokies win in Norfolk for the first time since God knows when.
Hokie Nation, I'm just saying, Vandy won their Week 2 game by 50. Possible overreaction to a Hokie loss to a not as bad as we thought SEC team? Food for thought.
Again, big fan of you guys and what you guys got going on, and go Hokies. Rock and roll.
Okay, that does it. And yes, that was Grayson with a couple of calls there, kind of going through all the stages of emotion.
Yeah, the first half was bad. We'll talk about this more, but the first half was really bad offensively, like really, really bad.
I mean, I kind of felt the way that Grayson did. Like, what is going on here? Like, why is this like this again? We just did this in the first half against Vandy. If you guys want to get in on the reaction line next week, when we play ODU, or I should say this weekend, 540-251-2169. I'll tweet it out during the game, but that's the phone number. Give us a call. Leave a short, poignant, funny message, and we'll play it on the podcast. All right, Stam, I want to ask you for your story of the game. Mm-hmm. But first, I do want to tell our listeners that we are brought to you by Jack and Coke, 2 legends, 1 can. Jack and Coke, the #1 cocktail in the world. You can see the can right on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Is now available in that very can. It's true. Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey mixed with Coca-Cola or Coke Zero is now available in your local grocery stores and convenience stores. 2 legends, 1 can, ready to drink Jack and Coke. As always, please, please, please drink responsibly. Okay, Sam, story of the game. What do you got?
This was kind of tough for me because it felt so again, just classic football. You like nothing exceptional happened in this game except for the defensive secondary. So that's kind of what I landed on. 12 pass breakups is ridiculous. That's a huge, huge number. And they got it from multiple different players. They got it from Delane. They got it from Kelly Lawson, who at his linebacker position has 3 passes defended already this year, as well as Mansour Delane. Yeah. I believe that's tied for 11th in the country. They really did play like classic Virginia Tech secondary. And that was after a week where I think they felt like they had very few opportunities to showcase themselves as a defensive secondary against Vanderbilt. And the opportunities they did have, they got beat. So I think they kind of took that game personally. And I hope they take it personally again this week against Old Dominion. But I mean, 13 of 36 for Stone Earl, Marshall's quarterback, like that air raid offense. We talked about it in the preview. if you're running an air raid and you don't have a quarterback and you have like one good wide receiver, it's probably not. It's stinky. It's probably not going to work out for you. And it didn't work out for him. Like Tech did a really good job keeping everything in front of them. They were very, very aggressive. I think that's almost every play. That was a obvious passing down. They were in press man coverage.
I thought it was
3rd and 12. They were all over them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it was really a team effort because of all those pass breakups, a lot of people were involved. Linebackers, defensive backs, and the whole defense, when you look at who made the tackles, it's 4 different guys made 5 tackles. They really spread around the production, team effort. And that was my story, was just the defensive bounce back was huge. And I know we had first half struggles with the offense again, but I was worried about the defense after week 1. And maybe it was a unique offense and we knew that, but to see them play like this, give up only 278 yards, put up some stats, and really, I mean, they gave up 7 points because the other 7 was because of a bad special teams punt block.
Yep.
So I thought the defense played pretty outstanding start to finish, save for a couple of plays, which it's kind of, that's what we've kind of done, whether it was under Bud or now. Like we're bound to have some break, but more often than not, and it happened in this game, we shut them down.
Yep. Marshall only had 3.83 yards per pass play. That's really so that's basically like nothing. Like if they did that every single play, they might get a first down. So you really saw this Virginia Tech team lock down Marshall. Like they really just didn't have anything explosive. They had no tight end game. They had no running back out of the backfield. Tech really did a comprehensive defensive performance against Marshall. Really, again, it was a punt block and a big run by probably their best offensive players out running back.
I want to ask you about the defensive line because we had 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. There were 36 pass attempts in the game. When we played Vandy, the D-line, I thought they weren't the major problem, but we lost and Pavia kept getting yards. We had very, very high hopes for this defensive line. Do you think that are you worried at all about it? Do you think that they're not playing up to their potential, or is it just kind of two games and we're still getting our feet wet here?
Vanderbilt barely threw the ball. And I think the defensive line did make plays in that Vanderbilt game. The defensive line wasn't the issue, it was the linebacking core.
Yeah.
Brent Price said as much. In fact, he said that Sam Brumfield he pretty much said he played awful against Vanderbilt and he played really well against Marshall, which is a good sign. I think they got in Stone Earl's head. He felt the pressure and he was getting rid of the ball very quickly. I don't think he went past his second read once in that game.
Yeah, he was firing it.
He was just getting the snap, one step, throwing the ball. And that's probably why Virginia Tech had so many pass breakups. That's why they felt so good playing press coverage. They did not blitz a whole ton. I only saw like 1 or 2 instances where they really brought like 6 guys. They'd occasionally bring a linebacker, but not much.
What about the one where Mose got the sack? What was that play? Was that a blitz? But
I believe, yeah, that was like a 3rd and 8 blitz early in the game. I just think they got in Stone Earl's head, and that's like they didn't really have a ton of opportunities for sacks. Stone Earl is a somewhat mobile quarterback. Like he's not a statue back there. I think he's very similar to the quarterback that Virginia Tech.
He's just not any good.
Again, I think he's very similar to the quarterback Virginia Tech will see this weekend.
I certainly hope so. Just checking my notes to see what else I have on the defense. Yeah, I was just trying to get your thoughts before I said anything, but like I kind of agree with everything you said about the D line. The only reason I'm worried is because my bold prediction was 50 sacks.
They're not getting 50 sacks.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble on the bold prediction front there.
I mean, I could see a game where they get like 8. Like, do you remember the Miami game where the Thursday night game with Brad Kaya? I think Tech got like 10 sacks.
Yeah,
Tech got like 10 sacks in that game, and they just overwhelmed Miami's offensive line, and Miami had to throw all game. I could see them having this group having a game
like the
that.
Syracuse night last year, where we were
Yeah,
just like
I mean,
wreaking
this is
havoc.
I don't want to, we'll get to the ODU preview, but this ODU offensive line is terrible.
It's really bad. Yeah,
They've given up 9 sacks this year against East Carolina and a very, very good South Carolina defensive line. But this is one of those weeks where I can see the game script going in such a way where like APR gets his 4 sack game type thing.
It's going to happen. One of these games, it's going to happen. No, we haven't put up the sack numbers yet, but I do agree the D line has played well as compared to some of the other units on the team. All right, offense. Again, a tale of two halves here, man. The first half was so annoying. Like I was so frustrated watching that. And we did a little bit of this on CFB Monday, so we're not going to redo all of our points, but we need to focus on the run. We just have to. We're not good enough. We had 17 pass plays in that first half. I think they netted 21 yards. Think about that. I mean, the rushing in the first half, it was like 20 rushes for 110. And so listen, that's not the be all end all stat, but like we could not move the ball through the air. Kyron was not comfortable. We needed to find a way to run the ball and get him in a rhythm. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, so I was in the stands. What I do when I'm watching Tech plays, I take notes on each drive, and they're just 1 or 2 bullet points usually for them. The first drive of the game where Virginia Tech had a failed 4th down, they threw the ball on 4th and 1, which is dumb. But they also Kyron checked into the wrong play on 3rd down. He checked into a run blitz on 3rd down, which was really questionable. Like you could see him do the check with me. Marshall didn't change their defense up, and he just ran right into the blitz. I think that was a Kyron miss on 3rd down. Then you get to 4th down, and he misses a wide open Aiden Green, who would have had a big gain. He just didn't see him. And I feel like that's kind of how this offense has gone. Like wrong check at the line, and then you get flushed out of the pocket and you don't have your eyes downfield. I thought they had issues on the offensive line. I thought Lath Gainham didn't play particularly well in this game. There were 2 or 3 rushing plays in the first half where he just kind of got blown up and they started targeting him a bit. Brody Meadows is back in practice this week, and he
was not suited up, right, for last week.
No, he was not suited up. So he's back. He is listed as the backup left guard. I would expect him to get some run this weekend. And then I thought I have the 5th drive, like they threw the ball on 3rd and inches again, and then ended up punting from that. Like it's just another instance of like, dude, just run the ball.
I know.
Like, we're crushing them, and that kills that drive. And then again, like the 7th drive, Kyron missed Ollie Jennings wide open. Like he just didn't even look at him, and then he was wide open. And then we throw a screen on 3rd and long. And then for me, that's like
have you had enough of the screens on 3rd and long? Like I'm
dude, it's like
it's frustrating as shit, man. Like, and I know like it's easy to complain about that when it doesn't work, but like I haven't seen one work. Like, especially not on 3rd and long.
I mean, the key is not to get, and this sounds so pretentious of me, but like the key is to not get in 3rd. Like there aren't a lot of good 3rd and long plays. There just aren't.
Fair, but if you go horizontal, you're really not going to get anywhere.
Did you watch did you watch the Browns on Sunday? That's all they did all game.
I saw
it was awful,
dude. They're so bad on offense.
And you know what? I don't like, they're terrible. I think it is a lot of get the ball, like 3rd and long, get the ball to your playmaker, let him make a guy miss, see what you can get.
I get the idea.
Like that's the idea behind it. The issue is running it every single time, and the defense knows it, especially when you're playing a defense that's really heavy zone defense between Vanderbilt and Marshall. Yeah.
In that instance, you're also asking these offensive linemen who struggle in general to, some of them, get out and block someone downfield in that situation. And like, that's not going to happen. Like, that's not, how well is that going to go?
Yeah. When they can't even pass block normal.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's exactly what I'm saying. So yeah, that's just one thing, but it's run the ball. Like, it's simple. And do you think that a mandate came down from Pry at halftime? Do you think Bowen just said,
I think he figured it out.
His senses?
Well, also, like when you're going, 2 things. So against Vanderbilt and Marshall, Virginia, over 80% of the plays that Virginia Tech has seen offensively have been against a zone defense. That's a really, really high number. And teams are doing that so that Kyron doesn't just take off and run, right? They want to keep the linebacker's eyes on Kyron, keep everybody's eyes on Kyron, make sure he doesn't beat you with his legs. That's why Kyron's legs haven't been really a factor in either of these games, is because they're keying in on it.
Yeah.
And that's also why a lot of those screens haven't worked, because it's tougher to block guys who are in a zone defense on those situations. And I also think some of these plays, blockers are getting blown up. Like there was a running play. Which drive was it? I believe it was the 7th drive. That drive where they ran the screen on 3rd and long. They had a rushing play where Tuden probably picks up the first down, 10 plus yards. Benji Gosnell on a one-on-one from like that. They run that tight formation. He's like a tight slot receiver almost. Just gets absolutely blown up, and the guy makes the tackle on Tuden. And that's like, you have your tight end on a one-on-one block. You don't even have to pancake him, just get in the way. And Benji just gets crushed. And as an offensive coordinator, you're like, I need you to just get in the guy's way, and you're getting blown up. So I think the blocking hasn't been great from the offensive line and the tight end room. I think they really miss Nick Gallo on a lot of these plays, really miss him. And then Kyron is not seeing the field well. He's missing a lot of wide open guys.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about that, whether it's not seeing them or just missing them with the pass, or there was some drops against Vandy as well. Do you think some of the offensive woes have come from trying to please the wide receivers? Like, oh, we've got all these guys. We paid them NIL, and there's like a cricket going crazy behind me. So are we trying to be pass first because we've got mouths to feed, so to speak, on the outside? And I think you even said this on CFB Monday. You said, or maybe last week, we're trying to score in the most beautiful way possible, rather than just get in the end zone any way you can.
Yeah, we're trying to be Barcelona out there and score the most beautiful tiki-taka goal we can. And I think that's more part of it. Daquan Felton in the press coverage, or the media session, excuse me, this week was asked a question like that, saying, hey, is it difficult trying to get the ball to everybody? And he brushed it off and he said, no, like we're just out there trying to play matchups, get the ball to somebody. His quote was, if one of us eat, we all eat. And I think that's how they feel.
And that made me feel better, because I did see that.
I genuinely don't think the offense is running enough plays in the first half of these games. Like they're going 3 and out way too much, and they don't have the opportunity to get the ball to these guys. Like
you're right.
if you run the ball twice and throw the ball once, that's only one, and then go 3 and out. You only have one target on that drive. And that's kind of what, even though Virginia Tech had a ton of drives in this game, especially in the first half, they didn't have a ton of plays.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they just need to find a way to get drives going, because like we saw in that second half, once they got drives going, they could get guys involved.
Yeah. And it was great because, well, they didn't get too many wide receivers involved, because in the second half we threw 5 passes. and
you know what? I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too, man. 27 rushes to 5 passes in the second half, and it worked. And I don't know. Like, if you want to talk about skill players, we had mentioned on Monday, Allie Jennings had 0 catches. That's a little bit bizarre, but it goes back to what we were just talking about. Steven Gosnell had the amazing catch, full layout. When you're a little kid playing football in the yard, that's the kind of catch you want to make. Like, Steven Gosnell is so impressive. 9 months off the ACL. He might be our best overall receiver. Like, he is so dang good.
I mean, I think there is part of, when you are game planning for Virginia Tech and you look at their wide receiver core, he's the 4th name that comes up, maybe the 5th if you look at Benji Gosnell. And I think teams just say, hey, we'll put one guy out there on an island, or hey, we don't have to work. If this guy's out here, let's focus on Tuden, let's focus on Felton, let's focus on Lane. He's getting a lot of favorable matchups. He's just burning guys, and he runs a lot of deep routes. I don't have the exact number on how his average route depth, but he doesn't do the classic possession wide receiver. He's not Cooper Kupp out there.
I was
he's
gonna
going
say,
down the field.
I was going to make the comparison to Hunter Renfro on Clemson, and it's like that's not really the same kind of player. Like he's more of a downfield kind of guy.
He's more of a if we're going to talk Browns, like he's more of an Amari Cooper. Like he can do the close, but he thrives in that medium range, like across the field flood route type thing. Like I think he's just
especially in critical situations, man. Like if you need a catch, he will get you a catch. Benji also had a really nice one in this game. Felton caught the TD pass. So I think Drones had the rushing and he had the passing TD. So again, Drones numbers, like no, the yardage wasn't there. Got a couple touchdowns, didn't throw an interception. Not what we were expecting, especially from a QBR aspect. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but like as it wore on and we ran the ball, he got the job done.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. Price said in the media coverage this week, he said, we got to get Kyron going. And I think they feel like he hasn't really been unlocked this year. And that's what's hurting their offense is he's not a distributor. That is not his skill as a quarterback. He's a playmaker. And right now they're not having him make plays and it's hurting the offense.
Yeah. Tootin was an absolute workhorse. We need to mention Tugboat. That's the nickname we've been seeing. 120 yards on 22 carries and a touchdown. Malachi had 52 yards. PJ had 23 yards, ran the ball really well in the game. And of course, Drones had 15 carries. Now they only went for 13 yards because of the sacks, but he did have the rushing touchdown. And so, if this is the identity, I'm okay with it. We've got the backs to do it. We didn't even see Coney or the freshman who has 4 games that you would think that they'd play the record-setting guy. I can never remember his name.
Mason?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see him at all this year, but he does have 4 games if you want to redshirt him.
I think Malachi Thomas is running really well in his, and I think Prelude is running well in his as well. Tootin is just an automatic, like 120 all-purpose yards plus. What he's doing running the ball, but also passing the ball. He has 10 receptions through 2 games as a running back, and that's second in the country. Only the Rice running back has more with like 13. So Tootin is if you play fantasy college football or daily fantasy college football, Bashal Tootin might be a guy to get on your team because he is such a big part of this offense and he does it on the ground and as a receiver.
And I respect that statistic. It might not be the best thing from an offensive standpoint to see a running back with that many catches.
I would say probably 5 of them are checkdowns.
Right. But it's good for his skill set. If he's trying to show the NFL, like, hey, I can catch out of the backfield, like that's good for him.
He's very, very similar to Khalil Herbert in his skill set.
Dude, he's so freaking
He just
good.
Does like
he gets on a roster
bit of everything really well.
I hope he gets drafted, but say he doesn't get drafted. He will be on an NFL roster next year. I guarantee it. He is that good. Before we move to ODU, is there a chance that our offensive struggles the last 2 weeks are because the defenses we've faced are actually better than we perceive? I heard Richard Johnson say this on Split Zone Duo that the Marshall defense is really good. And 2 years ago, the Marshall defense was very good. I wasn't sure that's what it was going to be, but is there a chance that we looked bad because our opponent was actually pretty decent?
I think schematically Vanderbilt will be a good defense. I think other teams in the SEC will out-athlete them and will really just attack their weakness, which Virginia Tech didn't do for the first half of that game. As far as Marshall, I think that's a fine defense. It's a program that prides itself in defense. They have a lot of older guys who weren't starters last year. So guys who have been in the program and were behind really good defensive players, excuse me. So you don't really know like what those guys are like because, all right, yeah, they were a backup last year. How good could they be now? But they were behind a really good player. Like in some cases, I believe their corner went NFL. And they had a couple really good, like all conference level defensive linemen. So you have guys coming back who are part of that program, part of that system, and part of that weight training that are going to be good players. I think Marshall's a fine defense. I think they're very similar to the defense that Virginia Tech will play this weekend in Old Dominion, where it's just, they're not spectacular. They don't have a ton of All-American guys. They don't have a ton of NFL guys, but they have a system and it works, and they're kind of stifling. I mean, they haven't given up a lot of offense anytime. I think they had a lot of injuries towards the end of last year. When they were healthy last year, they were very, very, very good defense.
Yeah, I think Marshall also, in terms of talent on the roster, which usually, when it comes to defense, that translates. Marshall is probably one of the 10 best rosters in the G5 on any given year. Like I'm ballparking, but like if you think about what Marshall is able to get in the recruiting game and what they put on the field year in and year out, like it's usually on the upper end of G5. And so I'm not saying we should have had more than 3 points at halftime.
Especially defensive front seven.
Yes.
Like they always seem to have very high quality defensive front seven players. And I think Tech saw that in this game.
All right. I want to mention something about Kyron before we move to Marshall, just that he is 80th in the country right now in QBR. The O-line is not factored into QBR. And that was a problem for Calandria before. It's been a problem for Brennan Armstrong. It's been a problem for a lot of quarterbacks who, when you play behind a bad O-line, you tend to look bad. And so Kyron is sitting at 80th. And that is still worse than I would have ever expected through these first 2 games. And I just wanted to point out some of the hilarious names that have a better QBR than Kyron Jones right now. Hayden Wolf, who was the starter for ODU 2 years ago when we lost at SB Ballard.
Is he at Western Michigan?
Western Michigan.
Oh, look at that.
Hank Bachmeyer, better QBR than Kyron. It's pretty high up, actually. Malik Murphy, Bryson Daly, the Army quarterback, has a better QBR than Kyron. Eli Holstein, DJ Ugalele has a better, I know I did that wrong, but he has a better QBR than Kyron. Peyton Thorne and Grant Wilson, the current starter, maybe, for ODU. So statistically, it has been a bad start for Kyron Jones. Do I think he's played that bad? No, I do.
No, I don't think he's played. I thought he had bad moments and good moments against Vanderbilt, and I thought against Marshall, it's not about him making bad plays as much as him missing opportunities for good plays.
Well, also Hank Bachmeyer got to go up against UVA's defense
and North Carolina A&T.
Right. So it's not all equal. I'm bringing up some perspective. He can perform a lot better than he has been. That's kind of what I'm saying statistically and just from our eyeballs. And so let's go to, I didn't mention the punt block, but takeaways from Marshall.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway is the offensive performance has not been great. And I think a lot of it has to do with play calling. I think a lot of it has to do with the offensive line's pass protection. I do, however, think they're going to figure it out here. It's not like they forgot what they're doing. I think they're really close.
I think so,
like,
too.
You watch these games and you're like, man, they are, like, in a lot of cases, a step away from making some of these big plays. And that'll just open up the
to
whole
Jalen Lane in the Vanderbilt game. Like, we're an inch away.
Oh, yeah.
From the interception.
I mean, I think they scored on that drive, but like the drop by Aiden Green in the Vanderbilt game. In this game, you missed Ollie Jennings wide open. You missed Aiden Green wide open. There were opportunities in this game. Virginia Tech did get 48% of their total available yards, right? So like if you start your drive at your own 25, you have 75 available yards, right? Tech got half of their available yards in this game. So it's not like they were, crushed. It's not like they didn't move the ball at all. They averaged 6 plays per drive. Like they weren't terrible. They just weren't very good. And I think especially in the first half, there were some key plays where I think if they just run the ball in 2 of those drives, they probably score touchdowns in the first half. Like that 4th down, if you just run a read option with Kyron, you probably pick it up. And then the 3rd and inches where, they threw on that.
The first and goal from the 2.
First and goal from the 2. I mean, dude, if that doesn't get called which was a weird call. Like
that was a very strange call.
I don't think I've ever seen that call.
But that doesn't.
It was a weird play too.
They ran that play, which was totally bizarre, and then KD threw it when he was halfway to the ground.
If that's not called, Tech covers the spread.
Probably, yeah,
because
it was a big spread, and it was a big spread.
It was a 20-point spread. So let's. The offense hasn't been good. I think Tyler Bowen hasn't been good.
No, he hasn't been.
And I think Kyron hasn't.
I blame Kyron's struggles more on Bowen than on the player. And I'll always side with the player over the coaches.
We're at 29 points per game. We're over the Ferentz line. It's okay. It's okay.
All right. My takeaways. We need to score more than 3 offensive points in the first half against ODU if we want to win.
I agree with that.
That's my biggest, because that's what we've done the first 2 games. We need to be run first, run heavy, play action. That's what we need to do on offense. Defense looked better, more like what we expected them to be. Everyone played their part. Loved that. Clean up the gaffes on special teams. Clean them up.
Stu Holt's got to figure it out. There are way too many procedural penalties. He had another procedural penalty in this game. The pump block thing, I think it was more.
I mean,
it was more a good play by Marshall.
It was a great
play. They brought 10 guys on a punt block, and 2 of them came in right at the snap. I don't think I've ever seen an all-out punt block that is not at the end of a game.
Yeah, they brought the
there was a weird play.
We couldn't handle it. All right, let's move to ODU. But first, I want to tell you that the 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Rowback. You guys know Rowback, the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. They put out the new drop. The shirts are awesome. They're offering our listeners 20% off their first order using code 2DEEPVT. They have the hoodies, they have the tees, the quarter zips, and of course, all those various polos. My wife just said she saw their latest. It was, I don't know if a magazine came to the house or what, but like, she's like, their new stuff is amazing. And she's not just talking about the tech drop. She doesn't care about that as much. She cares about the active wear, the joggers and the tennis skirts and all that kind of stuff. They've got really nice stuff for your wife, for yourself. Use code 2DEEPVT for 20% off your order. Rowback, crave activity. Right now, Sam, I need to know what you're drinking.
Well, I told you we would get autumnal with the beers. And this one I had at the tailgate. It was really, really good. Never had it before. The Farmhouse Pumpkin from Hardywood in Richmond, Virginia. It is a farmhouse style ale with pumpkin and spices, and it is really good. I really like this pumpkin beer because a lot of the pumpkin beers you get nowadays it's like if you were to take a very heavy stout triple IPA type thing and like blend in pumpkin pie mix, and that's kind of what they taste like. And you're like, oh, this is sweeter. Yeah, this tastes like, so I sound very white girl here, this tastes kind of like pumpkin spice latte, where you have the bitterness. It's not overly pumpkin. You get the spice. It's sweet. It's aromatic. Like it's really good. It's kind of what you want in the pumpkin beer without being overly pumpkin. So I think it's really good for September, early October. I really like it. You can only do 2.5. I'll do 4.25 on it. It's one of my favorite pumpkins I've had. So good job, Hardywood.
I've had that one. It is very good. Now, when you poured it out of
that one, it sucks.
out of the can, was there any sediment? Like, it's called a farmhouse, and sometimes the farmhouses are a little more cloudy. Like, is it very cloudy?
No, this one looks pretty crisp. It's got a nice orangish
I like all
amber
styles of beer, but when a beer's like too cloudy with that like sediment type stuff, it just kind of turns me off.
No, this one's pretty pure, pretty crispy.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, really good job by Hardywood.
I'm still on the Oktoberfest. This is, can't see it. It is an Oktoberfest by Black Hog Brewing. Sam, you know what they say? When you're thirsty, reach for the Black Hog. And this thing is from Connecticut. I had seen it in a couple of my stores around here, so I finally went for it. It is good. The one thing I'd say about this one, classic Oktoberfest color. Another Oktoberfest that calls itself an October, but also a fest beer. So we're working with both names here again. It's a little bit more bitter than your typical October. Like, not quite as bitter as a West Coast IPA, but along those lines. And so that's not really the direction I want to go when I reach for an October. So maybe not one of my favorite, but I will say this Black Hog Brewing Company, they are available in all the beer stores around me. And I had never heard of it until about a month ago. And their cans are cool and that kind of stuff. So I'll try some of their other things. I'm not going to write them off just because I don't like this one. But yeah, 6.2% alcohol, Oktoberfest from Black Hog. Probably a 3.5, maybe
Nice.
maybe lower. I don't know. I don't like to be too mean. I
On
like
this
all the-
farmhouse pumpkin, by the way, I did not notice this. It is at 8.5%. So it's a
Oh.
high percent guy. Yeah, I can zoom in there, I think. 21 IBU. I didn't notice that until I was doing my roadie from the tailgate spot into the stadium and chug-a-lug. And I started being, this is getting a little heavy.
So you were
With the
drinking
can-
pumpkin beers prior to Marshall. That's impressive, dude.
This was the beer I had. I had 2 cores and 2 of these guys. And
Very nice.
not a chugging beer.
No.
Not a chugging beer.
Once it gets to
but really
cold
good.
weather, you can have 4 to 5 pumpkin beers before the game. That's the Hokie Hack special. Drink 5 pumpkin beers, start cheering on your team. And I loved his Bruce Springsteen call, by the way. That was so funny.
I think we have 2 New Jersey natives in the Sons of Saturday Network who would love that.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going back to SB Ballard. This is
Vietnam West.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disparage the troops or anything having to do with war, but it has been a war zone over there in Norfolk, and this series could not be more stupid. I'm not saying that we shouldn't play ODU. I've said it online repeatedly. I don't think we should play ODU at ODU. And yes, does that come across as sour grapes now that we've lost there? It does. But I've said that before we ever played a single game there. We should have never been playing games in a 20,000 seat stadium. Grayson went on a big rant on this on Dan's podcast of just like, the big boys don't do this, right? And I know we're not Michigan. I know we're not Alabama. But like, let's not lower ourselves to ODU either. Like the only thing that happens by playing there, people think, oh, it's going to give you this big boon to your recruiting. You get to show off in front of the 757. The only go ahead. I'm just it's stupid.
No, I was going to say, name one recruit that Virginia Tech has been a battle in with Old Dominion. Name one.
Right. And we even stole their player. Like we took Ollie Jennings from them. This is not like we don't need to go to this. People have televisions, and also say you want to recruit a guy from the 757. Oh, come to the ODU Virginia Tech game. 1, you lose. 2, he's not going to go to school. He's not going to go to school there. That's not where you want him to go to school. You want him to go to school Blacksburg, where the atmosphere is 10 times better. Invite him to a game there. Nothing about this series makes any sense to me.
A contract signed by an athletic director who is not a football athletic director. It was signed by a baseball athletic director.
Are you talking about Witt, or are you talking about who are you talking about? Well, we can leave names out of it.
Both of them screwed it up. I mean, they know they screwed it up at this point. They tried to get out of it last year.
They did try to get out of it.
The ACC is pushing Virginia Tech to get out of this.
You know, Pride hates it.
I hope my tweet came across correctly. So I was in the media coverage this week, and he was asked twice about this. I forget who asked the first question, but it was asked by David Teal later on as well. He said all the right things, right? My job as the football coach is to beat the next team on the schedule. Old Dominion is the next team on the schedule. We just got to go in there and win.
He said we got to be the kind of team that can go win there. And
exactly.
We do need to be that kind of team. But there's also something in college football where you don't put your head in the lion's mouth.
Literally, isn't their mascot a lion?
Exactly, yeah. Sam. Thank you for picking up on that.
He sounded like somebody, Pete, when you're not like physically, like you don't want to hit something, but you just need to like scream into a pillow. That was his attitude. He wanted to scream into a pillow about this series. And for me, it has nothing to do with playing Old Dominion University. Like it could be any other school. The issue is you're taking a game away from Blacksburg. Virginia Tech, when they play Old Dominion, only has 6 home games. That is a detriment to the program, to the fans, to the economy of Blacksburg that relies on these college football Saturdays. Other big teams have 7 home games. Some of them have 8. Notre Dame only plays 3 true road games this year. Like big boy programs, and this is not just Michigan, Alabama, Georgia. This is Oklahoma State. It's Washington. It's Utah. They play 7 home games.
When I was in school, Sam,
stupid.
We played 7 home games every year. Like
yes,
maybe it had been 8 in 2002 because we had that preseason game. So
this contract makes it so 1, you can't sell another game of season tickets. You can't sell another game of single game tickets. You can't get the boost to the local economy. It's another Saturday where you can't host recruits in Blacksburg. It's another game where you don't have the home field advantage. I mean, I could go on and on and on. It's not about Old Dominion. You got to beat Old Dominion. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's U of R. I don't care if it's Old Dominion.
Marshall last year.
I don't care if it's UVA Lynchburg.
Yeah.
You got to win the game. My issue about the contract is the fact that it takes a game away from Blacksburg. And I live 15, 20 minutes from SB Ballard Stadium. I could get there in a heartbeat, and I still don't want to play there.
And that's
I would rather drive to Blacksburg.
And we will move on from this in a second, I swear. But like, there are some fans that live in the 757 that are Tech alums, and they want to go see their team play, and it's really nice for them that they can go see them and play in their backyard. That is great. And to those fans, I'm happy that you've had the experience of watching us lose twice in SB Ballard Stadium because we happen to play close to your house. I'm sure it was a very enjoyable experience. But for the 5,000 of you that enjoy that, everyone else hates it. And it's probably less than 5,000 that actually enjoyed it.
Pretty much.
And so anyway, this is probably done after this year. I would assume that we will never play in Norfolk again after this.
So, yes, I don't believe Tech will play in Norfolk after this game. I think the ACC will step in with a little bit more power. I think Virginia Tech will say enough is enough. They will play at home against Old Dominion, and then I think call it. I've brought up that I think the ACC wants to move to a 9-conference game schedule. Right now, they can't logistically do that because of the odd number of teams. The scheduling just doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens with Florida State. We'll see what happens with Oregon State, Washington State, whoever. I do think the ACC is saying enough is enough with these because you're seeing them in other places.
It just hurts. It hurts. Yeah. It hurts our program. It hurts the conference. It hurts everything. And especially when you've lost like we have. So how can we overcome this hurdle that Pry has to clear? Well, this is a bad team. And once again, on paper, we should beat them in a similar fashion to the way we beat them last year. However, that game was in Lane Stadium. It wasn't in the South version of the Carrier Dome. So we have to find a way. If you look at ODU and just their big picture, let me frame it for you, Sam. 94th in FPI, up from 108 preseason. Despite being 0-2, they have moved up in the FPI because they played South Carolina so close. SP Plus is 114. We are 45th, so a big advantage in SP Plus. Preseason, Athlon had them at 102. Lindy's 117. Steele 105. All very poor rankings for ODU. They have 57 total newcomers on their roster.
Yeah,
15th highest total in the country. That is nearly 70% of the roster is being.
Yeah, they're as program wise for ODU, they have a lot of. It's tough. It's tough for them. Everyone wants to recruit in their backyard. The Sun Belt is usually a pretty good conference. They have really struggled to retain players. Like they had this exact same thing last year. It even might have been more last year.
I think it was a little bit more.
Yeah. They are not winning the transfer portal era.
And there are a few areas on the team where like they really got crushed. Like the DB room got crushed. RB room, they replenished with Bryce Duke, formerly a Hokie, and Aaron Young from Rutgers, but the RB room took a hit too. But Ricky Ronnie, their coach, he is 15-25 over his 4 years. That includes the 2 losses this year. But that doesn't really tell the whole story because this team went to a bowl last year. They fight week after week. Every player, whether it's the quarterback or the defensive backs, the linebackers, like every player on his teams fight tooth and nail. Now, sometimes they let teams back into a game. But Sam, you know the stat. Like ODU plays close games.
I said 15-25. So that's what is that? 40 games?
Yep.
40 games. I think I tweeted that wrong. I think he said he had 45 games. They have played 26 one-score games under Ricky Ronnie. Over half of their games. They are 10-13 in those. This team finds a way to play one-score games. It does not matter if they're playing Virginia Tech, South Carolina, or Texas A&M Commerce like last year, where they beat 10-9. They find a
Insane.
way to play one-score games. They're not particularly good at them. Again, 10-13. But they just find a way. And it's a credit in some cases to this coaching staff, but then it's also like what are you doing? Like, why are you only beating Texas A&M Commerce 10-9? Why are you struggling with Southern Miss? Why are you struggling with
you remember
Georgia
their bowl
State?
game,
Like,
Sam?
they let Western Kentucky come back and win that game.
They
in
were up
overtime.
28-0.
Yeah. I
So
think
it works both ways with this team.
Yeah, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but they have a pretty low talent level on their roster. They don't recruit very well. They don't out-athlete anybody. They do play very hard. But I think because they don't have dominant players, skill position players, they are not very good on the offensive line. In fact, I think they're pretty bad. Teams, they play to their competition every single week.
Typically.
And they have every week under Ricky Ronnie. They have very, very rarely have they been blown out in games.
That's the best way to put it, is that they do, in fact, play to their competition. If you want to talk at the O-line, 33 starts is all they had coming back this year. They've already given up 9 sacks, which is 133rd in the country. There are 134 teams, Sam, as you know. And so the O-line is not very good. They had a hard time scoring last year. They were 88th in scoring.
Yep.
This year, I think they're 125th in yards per play so far.
Yeah, I have some of their advanced metrics from the ECU game where they lost 20-14 against an ECU team that was a pretty terrible defense last year. They averaged over 7.5 plays per drive, 48% total yards, but they had only a 38% success rate. That's 34th percentile over the last 2 seasons. Only had 3.8 yards per play. That's 6th percentile. They were a bad passing team. They had 6 turnovers.
Layman's term of the summary of that.
They're not good
on offense. That they are not good.
They're not good on offense, and they turn the ball over. They have 6 turnovers through 2 games.
They turn the ball over 4 times. No, wait. I'm getting this wrong.
4 times against South Carolina. 4 times against South Carolina. 2 times against ECU.
Yes. And and we can talk about the turnovers for the defensive side of the ball too, which didn't help them. And that actually plays into it because their defense generated 4 turnovers last game against ECU and they lost. Like that is incredible. They had 4 interceptions, right? And they lost the game. So that's the kind of offense we're working with here, is even despite being given the ball over and over and over again, they couldn't help their defense out. Now, I'm worried about the quarterback thing because we've seen this before. We had this situation happen to us where we think we're going to play one quarterback. We get the backup who ended up going to seminary school and majoring, or it's like going pro in something other than sports. He became a priest, for Christ's sake.
Kidding.
But he beat the crap out of Virginia Tech in 2018 and Blake LaRussa. Grant Wilson is questionable, I guess, for this game. He was the starter last year. He started the first 2 games for ODU this year. His QBR isn't good. He's not a good player. He can scramble a little bit. He scrambled on us last year. But now they're talking about playing this Colton Joseph kid who's never had a collegiate snap. Mm-hmm. And his players are calling him Johnny Manziel-esque.
So it means he's short and white. That's what it means. That's what it means.
It means he runs around, Sam.
I'm worried about that. I'm worried about that. Last year, and we have to take away, what was it, 2018? The ODU lost 2018. Yeah. We have to take away that game. It was a different staff. It was different
for
players.
Both schools. Different.
Both teams are running totally different systems. Throw that game away. Let's focus on the last 2 years. Virginia Tech, in many facets, dominated that game with not a lot of talent on.
Which one? The first one or the second one?
The first one. They just had so many stupid plays happen and so many turnovers and so many penalties. I think Tech had like 130 yards of penalties in that game. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They only gave up one offensive touchdown.
Yeah, because we snapped it over the kicker's head.
Last year, we only gave up 2 offensive touchdowns. And the reason we gave up 2 offensive touchdowns is because ODU just kept running the same read option over and over and over again. And I shared screenshots in the Sons of Saturday text. We had guys actively running away from the football. Like there were plays where Virginia Tech had players sprinting head down towards a running back who did not have the football. We had plays where defensive backs looked like they were blocking the ODU wide receivers 15 yards downfield as ODU ran down the field. And we still only gave up 2 touchdowns. Like Tech was not a great team when they played ODU last year. We saw that in the Purdue game the next week. And they still won handily and could have won by more. They
19 points last year.
Yeah, took a knee inside the 5-yard line to end the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that was with Grant Wells.
And that was with Grant Wells. I hate that if this game was in Blacksburg, Tech would win by 4 touchdowns. Like this is not a good ODU team. But they somehow just muck it up for Virginia Tech and they muck it up for everybody else. And if Tech can't play a read option, they're going to be in trouble.
Yes, because if I know Ricky Ronnie like I think I do, we're going to see this Colton Joseph kid. We might not see him the whole game, but we're going to see him. And then the other backup that they have who could potentially play for Grant Wilson. Because Grant Wilson doesn't really scare me, despite him playing very hard in last year's game. Emmett Moorhead is also on the roster. You might remember that name, Sam, from BC. I believe he was a BC quarterback who was not very good. Actually, a very bad BC quarterback. And so maybe Colton Joseph, as a redshirt freshman, making his first career start could do something against us because it's just so unexpected. And that's exactly what Ronnie wants to do, I'm sure. But overall, their wide receiving core is meh. They have Bryce Duke at running back, who I like Bryce Duke. I liked him as a potential backup at Tech. Aaron Young from Rutgers has actually been the leader. He has 139 yards on 41 attempts. So you're talking about less than 3.5 yards a carry. They played South Carolina tough because exactly what we said, right? They keep themselves in games. And maybe South Carolina was looking ahead to Kentucky. I don't know, because they beat the piss out of Kentucky. But they played South Carolina tough, and we can't overlook that because South Carolina probably has a better D-line than we do. Yeah. And they sacked them a lot, but they still stayed in the game. And so we can't go into this game thinking, oh, we're the power team, we should win, whatever. We have too much history, and we have too much bad ODU juju to go in there feeling confident. Yeah, it's
all up here.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the quarterback. I want to talk about the running back game a little bit. Bryce Duke, he's the second string guy. He's gotten a few touches here and been fine. Their starter is Aaron Young. Against South Carolina, 16 carries for 56 yards. Against East Carolina, 25 carries, only 83 yards, and he had a big run in there as well. Like, they have not been able to run the ball with their running backs yet. And I know they've been sacked 9 times, but only 19 rushing yards from the quarterback as well. So they have not been able to run the ball very well this year. So if you're Virginia Tech, like on one hand, you're like, hey, Tech should stifle them. On the next hand, though, like if they are able to establish some sort of run, that could mean that offense opens up a bit.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Don't let that happen. The only thing you need to do is key on the run. Bring every defender down you have other than Dorian and Mansour. Let them mess around with the wide receivers by themselves on the outside and just key on the run. Because if they can't run, this team ain't going nowhere, because there's no way like the quarterback running is like a Diego Pavia type thing is the only thing that I worry about at all.
And they're not running triple option stuff like Vanderbilt was. They're just running simple read option. And I would also point out that, yes, and last year they installed this new offense. They got the offense coordinator from Fordham and quarterback from Fordham as well. And they established this new offense. There was no film on it. Nobody knew what it was going to look like. And nobody knew Grant Wilson could run like that when Tech played them. So Tech was not ready for that at all. Once
Brent
that
Wilson
film
had
was
never
out,
played a college game. Like he never
yeah,
started a game, I don't think.
no. Once that film was out, defenses were able to key in on it. And I think that's why teams are having success defending them this year, is because there is a year of film on it. So I think that's important to remember too.
All right. So their defense is significantly better than their offense. Last year, they were 37th in yards per play. They only gave up 288 total yards to South Carolina, but they did allow 174 rushing yards to the Gamecocks. So I know it wasn't like a big yards per rush, but then you look at the next game. They played ECU. They gave up even more yards in the running game and a better average. 4 rushing TDs in 2 games also given up by that defense. What I'm trying to say here is the defense is better than their offense. But with what our strength is in running Tootin, I think this is a good matchup for us.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, it's weird because they are a good defensive team, but you're also looking at this like, how in the world did ECU only score 20 points in that game? Jake Garcia, the East Carolina quarterback, had 283 yards passing on him on 38 attempts. He was 25 of 38. He threw 4 interceptions, and all of those interceptions were on the ODU side of the field. Like ECU, if they would have lost this game, they would have been kicking.
They shot themselves in the foot over and over again.
Yeah, the quarterback Sellers, the quarterback for South Carolina, is terrible. He was 10 of 23 in this game.
He's like bad. He's a bad quarterback.
They haven't faced a good quarterback yet, and I think that's part of why some of their defensive metrics look so good. ECU wasn't very successful rushing the ball, but they had 6.9 yards per drop back. That's pretty good. That's good for.
I mean, are you talking about
like
success rate on the running? Because they did have like almost 200 yards rushing. I know the average wasn't great.
Yeah, their success rate rushing wasn't great, but their yards per drop back were very good. So when they went back to pass, they got almost 7 yards. Okay. Every pass play called, they got almost 7 yards. And I think that talks to the turnover that ODU has had in the defensive secondary, and also think that their best players are at that linebacker position. You kind of just want to avoid Jason Henderson.
Is he playing? That's the thing. Like, he didn't play last game. And they put in the former walk-on, Koa, and he had 18 tackles. Now, we're not going to get into tackle gate with ODU because they seem to be juicing the numbers during their
assisted
assisted tackles. But Jason Henderson, if he plays, even if he plays, I don't think he's 100%. Like, he didn't play last game. He's coming off the ACL at the end of last year. I
also don't know how much you try to scheme away from a player like that. He's very like Peyton Wilson from NC State. He is a ball hawk. Like, he's going to fly around the field. That's why he has so many assisted tackles, because he's always there. I think you just run your offense.
I think you run your offense because you don't know. Like, they said at media days, like, he was favoring his knee. Like, he is not. He did, like, he literally just didn't play the last game. Like, he is not 100%.
He's in college this year because of that knee.
Yes,
he would have been a draft pick.
When fully healthy, this guy does 170 tackles a year. Like, he's absurd. He's like Luke Kuechly out there. So I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know how well he's going to play. But without him, even without him, their linebacking core is pretty good. But that doesn't negate the fact that the last 2 teams have averaged 178 yards rushing per game. So we'll be able to run the ball against that 3-man front. I know that the Russian defense did improve last year. It's what we have to do. Like, I don't care if it's not working perfectly. You have to commit to it, and you have to open up things for Kyron. He's got to get healthy. Let's talk about keys to the game here, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's forget who you're playing, forget where you're playing, just play football. Because if Tech just goes out there and plays football, they're going to be fine. I mean, they played like dog doo-doo in the first half of that game against Marshall offensively, and they still put up 30-plus points. They still were in control of that whole game. They looked terrible in the first half against Vanderbilt, and then they still came out in the second half and scored 24 offensive points. Like, this team is good. This team is still good. They're not just all of a sudden bad because they had a bad first half against Vanderbilt. Like, this team is good.
I feel
just go out there and play. The only way ODU wins this game is if 2022 happens again And the only reason 2022 happened was because we had a bad team and we had a coach who, quite frankly, at that time didn't know what he was doing. And we
First
just
game.
made stupid mistake after stupid mistake.
Yeah, I mean, that was a comedy of errors. It was so bad. And so yes, barring something crazy, I do think Tech's going to come away with the win. But going back to just my feeling about the team, no, the first halves of each of our two games haven't been good. I think we're going to see a different Virginia Tech team. I think we're going to see that commitment to an identity, to the run game, to open up the pass. And once that pass is opened, this secondary is projected by Phil Steele to be one of the worst in the country. We should be able to like scorch this team in the passing game if you set it up right.
Mm-hmm.
And so get some early success in the run game. Stay ahead of the chains. 5-yard third downs. Let's try to do that. 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Like, let's get there. Use the pass game. Use Kyron's legs when appropriate. I think Kyron's had a few too many carries. One, because he's been sacked 8 times. But 2, he's been skittish. He's been scrambling. If you make him comfortable, if you make the defense be more honest because Tootin is ramming the ball down their throats, everything will open up.
Yeah. I would say if there were 2 things that if you're Brent Pry, you're telling your team, like, you can demoralize this team quickly if you get out and win it, because this Virginia Tech team is set up. The reason that they've won so many games by 3+ scores is because they are set up to dominate a team once they're up. The cornerbacks are very good. There's a pass rush, and they can lean on the running game. If you get up early in this game, you're going to feel good. We talked about it earlier about the Vanderbilt game, which Virginia Tech wasn't able to do. If you can get up 2 scores on a team in the first half, it's really, really hard to come back. Like it's not only mentally, but just time-wise, and especially with the running clock that they have in college football this year, you can kind of just milk away some time there if you're up 2+ scores. I think if Virginia Tech gets up, there's going to be so many Hokies in the crowd. They're going to have the noise behind them. Physically, they're going to be able to lean on ODU. This offensive line for Old Dominion is not good. I mean, they have a mobile quarterback and they've given up 9 sacks to East Carolina. They gave up 4 sacks. Like, that's preposterous.
Yeah.
And I can just go down the list and list. Like, ECU had 466 yards of offense. How they only scored 20 points is beyond me.
That's a lot of offense.
That's a ton of offense. Like, Pete, just win the
Can
game.
we put up more offensive yards than ECU? I would hope so. But this is sometimes games are bigger than the stat sheet. They're bigger than the rosters. And that's what this is. So I'm not asking you to cover the spread, Virginia Tech, which is 14.5. I'm asking you to win by 1. I'm asking you to win the game. And I will not complain 1 iota. Go down there, win the game, period, by any margin. And I will be a very, very happy man, because it's one of those demons we just have to exercise. And I'm hoping if this does come down to a close game, which I really hope it doesn't, but we could find ourselves in that situation. Price had a problem winning close games, Sam. 1-8 in 1-score games.
A lot of times in these matchups that are like just tricky spots for a team that's favored, there's usually a play in the probably early 3rd quarter, late 2nd quarter. That's like some sort of 50-50 play. It's a loose ball on the ground. It's a 50-50 jump ball in the air. And if the team who is favored makes that play, they usually go on to win the game pretty comfortably. Yeah. If they don't make that play, then it becomes a 50-50 game that anybody can win. Virginia Tech, since Brent Pry's been here, has failed to make those plays. I mean, look at the Vanderbilt game. There was 3 fumbles by Vanderbilt. Tech recovered none of them. There was the ball in the air after the tip pass that Mansour Delane couldn't come down with after wrestling with the wide receiver. Any of those plays are made by Virginia Tech, they probably beat Vanderbilt. And there have been so many times. Look at the Old Dominion game a few years ago. If Tech doesn't botch the snap on that field goal, then they go up and they probably run away with that game. And they probably just run the clock out most of the second half.
And that's my final thing. It's in all caps right here. Don't make the critical error.
Yeah.
We made the critical error last time we went. We made multiple critical errors against Vandy. If you don't do that, if you don't give up a touchdown to their defense or their special teams, Vanderbilt ODU is not going to score more than 13. They're just not. Like, if you don't mess up, they will not get to 2 touchdowns. I swear to God. I swear to Jeebus. With just don't do something insanely dumb, and we will win the game.
As RuPaul says, and don't F it up.
That is right. And then we'll leave it there. Let's go to picks, Sam. These are the 5 picks from the pick'em we're going to do tonight. And then we'll just talk quickly about some other games that are going on because this is a cool weekend in college football. LSU at South Carolina. South Carolina, 7.5-point underdogs at home.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this team because they played ODU. I don't think their offense is any good, but I don't know what LSU is either. I'm going to take LSU, but I do not like it. Taking, that many points on against a home dog, I really don't like it, but I'm going to take LSU minus 7.5.
South Carolina's defensive line is very good. LSU's offensive line is very good as well. I think they neutralize and then give me LSU's talent in that game.
Yeah, it's a good matchup for them. Bama at Wisconsin. Got the Tide going to Camp Randall. Plus 15.5 are the Badgers on the ESPN Pick'em. Oh man, I'm gonna take Bama. I'm gonna take Bama, dude. I'm not gonna do it. Like I'm too scared.
Points, dude. This is 15 points in Camp Randall.
I know, but what is?
Give me Wisconsin all day in this game. TBD. I think Alabama wins it. But 15 is way too many points. And that Alabama secondary is not very good. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter against South Florida. People are acting like they almost lost that game, which is dumb. Like they won handily.
Yeah.
But Wisconsin is a better team than what people think. They're not pretty. They're not going to outplay teams.
But Luke Fickell is very
They're going to keep it close.
I thought about this a lot, and I just I'm having a hard time thinking this Wisconsin team with Tyler Van Dyke. Talking about making the critical error. I'm taking Alabama. Next game, BC at Mizzou. Mizzou 16.5-point favorites at home. We talked a little bit about this on CFB Monday. I'm taking BC plus the points.
Yeah, I'm going to go Mizzou. I'm going to go Mizzou to win this one by 3+ scores. But I'm not personally going to bet it.
Yeah, no.
I think Missouri's
happen here.
Clearly a better team. Again, they haven't given up an offensive touchdown yet. BC played a dead in the water Florida State team, and then they played Duquesne last week. I think they're a little overinflated right now statistically. I'm surprised this line hasn't been bet to 18, 19 points. Give me Mizzou at home. Columbia, one of the sneaky toughest places to play in the country.
Oregon at Oregon State. Despite the Pac-12 breaking up, we are getting the Civil War. Oregon State, 13.5-point underdogs in Corvallis. I'm taking Oregon State.
Yeah. I think Oregon wins this game, and they probably dominate it statistically, but you don't go into Corvallis and cover. I think they're 9-3 against the spread in their last 12 at home. They've run the ball really well this year with Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson. I think Oregon State is going to be able to just shorten this game enough to keep it close.
Well, you add in the factor of them being pissed they got left out of the whole
pretty
deal.
Angry.
And Oregon hasn't played well yet.
No, they haven't, especially defensively, especially against the run. Yeah. And they're playing a team that really only wants to run the football.
And Oregon State just shut out San Diego State. And say whatever you want about San Diego State, a shutout, that's pretty dang good against a proud football program.
Mm-hmm.
Tulane at OU. Oklahoma, 13.5-point favorites at home. Another game we mentioned briefly. I think Oklahoma wants to bounce back. I think Tulane will find it hard to get up twice. I'll take Oklahoma minus 14.
Yeah, true freshman quarterback playing in Norman. It's a little iffy for me. Tulane kept it close. Shout out covering the 9.5-point spread last week, Green Wave. I think they're a very good team. I think they're going to challenge for the American Conference title. I think the Oklahoma has issues as being way overblown in this game. Tulane got beat out pretty bad by Kansas State. They kept the score closer than it was. I think Oklahoma pulls away with this one late. Jackson Arnold, he hasn't been great. I mean, he played Temple, which is kind of a statistical wash because Temple is like a middle of the road FCS team. But they're going to be fine. There's too much talent on Oklahoma. I think defensively, Oklahoma is really, really good. So I kind of like the under in this game, which is disgusting to say for an Oklahoma Tulane game.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but okay.
But I think
Sometimes
both
you gotta go off the
defenses.
beaten path.
I think both defenses are pretty good.
All right, so these are the other games. So we're done with our picks, but we got Arizona and K-State. That's going to be fun. K-State favored by TD. Arizona State and Texas State. Is that tomorrow night?
That is tomorrow night. That's going to be a really fun game. Arizona, Kansas State, non-conference game.
Weird, right? Like that was the old UNC and Wake Forest used to do that every now and again. All right, and then you got Washington State. So we get the Oregon and Oregon State. We're getting Washington State and Washington. We're getting Apple Cup early in the year. This is freaking cool as hell. And Washington only 4.5-point favorites.
Yeah,
I
they're
wouldn't be
playing
surprised for Washington State to pull that upset.
They're playing that at the Seahawks Stadium as well.
Oh, it's neutral site. Okay.
Yeah. So Washington State has been really impressive offensively. They've played two pretty bad teams, though.
At least one of them is a power team, but it's not good.
I'm not betting this game because it's one of those nasty rivalry games that's always really weird and wacky. But you should watch it if you can because it's going to be really fun.
You got a new staff at Washington.
Washington State wants to get this. They want to run the ball, and they're pretty darn good at it. So I think this is going to be a fun game.
A&M at Florida. Weird one this year at least, but in the swamp, maybe Florida comes out with that one. Memphis at FSU. We talked about that on Monday. Big spot for Memphis.
Yep.
Big spot for FSU. -6.5. Oh man, I don't know what's going to happen. Backyard brawl. WVU at Pitt. Again, it's a 2-point spread now. Pitt is +2. No idea what's going to happen. If a bomb hit the stadium, I'd probably be okay with it because these teams, I hate them both. Not in a terrorist way, just in a funny way. Let me say
from Batman.
A meteor, not a bomb.
with the button and the field goes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be.
And you want to talk about a meteor hitting the stadium? Maryland at UVA.
Golly, yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. I think a lot of. I don't know, dude. I mean, I think Maryland lost to a Michigan State team that is probably one of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten this year. They're a well-coached team, but probably one of the bottom feeders. UVA needed a big comeback to beat a really bad Wake Forest team.
Yeah. Maryland's probably the better team right now. And
Maryland's the better team, but UVA at home, it's going to be a weird game, and there's going to be a lot of
coming off the win, Maryland coming off the loss. I think it just flips the other way.
It flips.
Yeah, neither of them are that good. I feel like it's just college football momentum.
And I kind of see that. I know West Virginia played like Towson or somebody last week, whoever they played. I kind of see that in West Virginia Pitt. Like Pitt had the miraculous comeback to beat Cincinnati. They were down 27-6 or something like that, and they came back to win 28-27. West Virginia got embarrassed by Penn State. Those are probably two 5 to 7 win teams. Now you get the reversal. That's kind of how college football works.
It is kind of how it works. And I don't think Pitt's a very good team. But could I see them still getting the win because Narduzzi does shit like that? I could. And it's a rivalry. I'm less confident in UVA.
Nasty rivalry. That's a nasty one.
You'll probably have half WVU fans in Hines. All right, that's going to do it for the pod. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're hitting us up on Twitter, hitting us up on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram at 2DeepVT. Sam's got the Stick It In shirt. Shout out to that. That is.
I did this at the last game where I just had the maroon T-shirt with the VT and the Coors Light. We're still no nonsense. I'm just wearing the same shirt but in orange. We are no nonsense here. Run the damn ball. Stick it in. Stick it in. Stick it in.
I asked Sam for pictures from last weekend while he was at the game from Marshall. He sends me one picture, and he's standing there like a pencil with a Coors Light like this. It's like that's
nonsense. No nonsense. No nonsense, Pete. We're not here to take pictures. We're here to win football games. You want to take pictures, go to a fashion show.
Yeah. Games. Oh, man. All right. That's going to do it. Like I said, enjoy the game. hopefully we can finally, undo and right this wrong that's been happening for since 2018. And until next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.